Hello and welcome to our world. It's Monday evening. It's day 21, and it's that lockdown time again when all the hatches are battened down, and here we still are. So day 21 of lockdown, and it's almost exactly to the hour now. 3 weeks since the Prime Minister announced that we'd all be staying at home for a bit, and what an extraordinary 3 weeks it's been. Very extraordinary in many senses. I mean, who would have thought that the Prime Minister himself would have ended up succumbing to this virus that he was standing on a podium telling us about a month ago or whatever, and actually getting to the point where it was touch and go. It was probably 50-50 as to whether Boris Johnson would pull through in hospital, beg your pardon, no sort of holiday at all, and that wasn't intended as a joke, that's just a slip of the tongue. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for joining us. We're just saying that it's more or less exactly 3 weeks to the hour since the lockdown started here in the UK, and since then there have been no trips to the beach or running around sunbathing in the park or anything like that. We've been stuck at home. We went out for 10 minutes on Easter Sunday, and that was about it. Hello, Lizanne. Thank you for joining us this evening on our little tete-a-tete, coming live from our living room here in Cambridge in the UK. Hello, Tony. Thanks for your company tonight. And I think, kicking off today is the news that this lockdown isn't about to end. As far as we know, it will be extended a bit, and that the chief advisor has said that the lockdown won't be lifted until we're firmly on the other side. As a bit of a hello, Haroon, thank you for joining us. I'm a bit of a spreadsheet geek, as you probably know, so I'm keeping a daily tally of the cases at the moment. I'm using moving averages and all the sort of things that you'd use to check equities and portfolios and that kind of thing, to check basically the number of deaths in this thing. And 4 out of the last 5 days, the numbers have been slowing quite slowly. But if we hadn't all been locked up at home, they would have been by now going up very, very, very steeply indeed. By now we'd probably been heading for about 80,000 deaths if we'd all been going about for 3 weeks. As it is, we're probably now going to peak, off the top of my head, a guess, maybe at 20,000. We're at about 11,000 this evening at the time of recording. And that, funnily enough, is good news, because it could have been so much worse. And it's so gratifying to find most people following the rules. I'm not a rule kind of a guy. I'm very much a contrarian. I'm a rock and roll pirate radio, hoist the Jolly Roger, go out to sea and assert your freedoms kind of thing. But there are times when it is very appropriate to press pause. If we were still having to show, I don't know, bits of paper in 2 years' time to police at checkpoints, I would be very angry, and so would everybody else. But we seem to be slowly turning the corner. Apropos our government, they're doing these daily press briefings where they all stand at a podium and make grand announcements. But I think it's time now. Hello, Paul. It's very nice of you to join us this evening. I'm sorry that I was never able to hit the sort of 7 o'clock deadline that we'd hoped to do for this. So we're always about an hour late, give or take a bit. But it takes such a lot of time to assemble the Zimmer frame, you see, because it's made out of Meccano. And by the time I shuffle up here to the old living room upstairs, actually, so in another era it might have been a bedroom, probably in Victorian times, but it's always a bit late because so apologies. So yeah, we want the government to step up to the plate and to speak a bit less about this and to do a bit more, and to support the NHS. I think everybody wants that. I'm doing a charity gig on Saturday where all the proceeds are going to be going to our very brave doctors and nurses. So Kevin says that from what he remembers, the UK government were expecting around 20,000 deaths, and the US around 5 times that number. Those are the projections for if we do this lockdown. And obviously, if we didn't lock down, it would have been much, much higher. And if we'd all just gone about our business, there are a couple of countries doing that, having football matches as usual, and I think there's one in Eastern Europe and one in South America, off the top of my head. these guys are going to see astronomical deaths. We would have seen about 500,000 deaths if we'd all just been moseying around, mixing and spreading the germs. And the cost of that is far too high for anybody to justify. I think. But I must remember that our Prime Minister, during the campaign for the Brexit thing, went around the country on a bus saying £350 million a week for the NHS. I think now is the time to deliver that. They've saved his life, and these guys are risking theirs every day for us. So I would like to see that, and I would like to see the masks and the personal protective equipment, not just vague numbers and things. I would like to see doctors in hospitals wearing equipment that will keep them safe as they battle to keep us safe. I mean, is that a big ask? So anyway, rant over, and the good news, as I say, is that we seem to be moving in the right direction, and most people seem to be heeding this call to stay home. Hello, Michael. How are you this evening? It's been 3 weeks as of right now since we were all kind of locked up rather unexpectedly and at very short notice, to be honest. But there are ways in which life has changed, and there's a photo on the BBC website today of an underpass in London. St Paul's is in the distance, so I'm not quite sure. I think it's a pedestrian thing, actually. It doesn't look like something that cars could go down. But anyway, it's something heading directly towards St Paul's Cathedral, probably from the other side of the river. But I can't for the life of me say what it was. But anyway, whatever it is, it's deserted, and there are photos online all over the place of motorways and busy roads and everything where we've gone down to the and France have just extended their lockdown as well, apparently. But we've gone back to, on the roads, like 1955 levels of cars and lorries and things, and there's some ways in which that's pretty good, because it allows the air to be a lot fresher. It allows nature to come out and play a bit as well, which is quite nice. When we go out of the house, we keep a good distance from people, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Most of when we go shopping, we take turns, and we just flip a coin and say, "It's your turn." No, it's my turn, and that's what it is.
Yep.
Life has changed enormously for us in terms of decisions in many aspects in our lives, from professionally to personally to changing the whole agenda. So I assume many of the people with us, are going through the same thing, having to face the challenge of having the family around, having to do the work, and just rising up to the challenge.
And
that's what we can do.
Easter Sunday with our son consisted of a phone call, which is kind of terrible, really. But we do understand the reason for this. We do. Mm-hmm. So not only when we go for a little walk, which we do, not very often though, and it's only to the shops really. We don't do the daily exercise one. I'm keeping the eye on the sort of horizon. If I see somebody right over there, I'll kind of navigate us so that we're keeping a very good distance, because 2 meters might not be enough. There's some kind of debate about that, but we do what we can. And have we travelled in the car at all since this begun? Not really. We did 2 car trips in the 3 weeks to the big supermarkets, but now we're just kind of crossing the car park we live, and there's a very tiny little store there, and getting most of it there. And I thought this said football, but it says footfall at major railway stations. It makes much more sense. Has fallen dramatically. We can see, looking out of our window, people going in and out of the railway station. All the barriers are open at our local railway station. As of right now, I guess they consider it pretty hazardous to have the ticket checking people out there. So you can just wander on, and we can actually see the trains going in and out of the platforms. And the train arrives. Maybe one door opens, maybe one doesn't, but on the whole, the train just leaves, and you can see row after row after row of empty seats, and that is a huge thing. Apparently, just in the week before this lockdown was announced, which would have been 4 weeks ago, the footfall, the people going through Birmingham New Street Station, which is a huge kind of round station with things all over the place. We've been there, haven't we?
Yes.
And you can very easily get lost. It was 500,000 but by last week it was just 70,000. So people are heeding this call. A lot of people are able to work from home, which is great. There are people who can't. There are people who just haven't just been furloughed, and that was a new word that I discovered a week or two ago. I had to look that one up. But there are people who've lost their jobs. Apparently now we've got 3 million people reliant on food banks, which is absolutely shocking, absolutely terrible.
And the thing is that all this was so sudden, and people, I mean, well, some people do save money religiously day in and day out, as soon as they get the paycheck, but some of the ones don't, so or rely very heavily on overdrafts. So really now that's a crunching time for everybody in terms of looking at a new perspective, just to be prepared for the next time, and how important, because in the olden days everything was about saving, about making yourself strong financially, but now, in which credit is so easily available, we just go and use a little bit of plastic thing and just get more stuff out, and we don't check our finances very regularly, and that's when things like this can take us completely out of sync, and it can cause depression, it can cause sadness, it can cause people of many feelings. So being on top of our feelings and sensations, being in charge of them and addressing them. First of all, we need to acknowledge, yes, we are experiencing this. So what can we do about it? And just look inside yourself and search for the answers within yourself. If we happen that, okay, we are struggling financially, what can we do going forward, so we can avoid getting into this kind of disarray when it comes to this kind of fatalities. Really, we had to stay indoors to save humanity. We are very resilient as a species. Unfortunately, the economics and the life expectancy doesn't balance. So now we need to readdress and refocus that one to make ourselves stronger going forward. That's why taking on these kind of challenges.
Absolutely agree, 100%. And you know, another thing that occurs to me when you're talking there, I was thinking of being a bit of a sort of DJ. There's the song by the Beatles, "When I'm 64," and the only thing that they could think of to rhyme with Vera, Chuck, and Dave is "When I scrimp and save." So you know, these guys who not short of a few bob nowadays, the surviving Beatles, but you know, they grew up in houses where mum and dad had to keep a jar on the mantelpiece where they put money in. Just to get by on a sort of day-to-day basis, and the fact that our lifestyles, that we still live at the level of affluence that we did back in those days, is now due to borrowing and due to the fact that we're all in debt. So actually we're all a bit poorer. We're all a bit poorer because if we have to borrow now from the banks to keep the same standard of living we had before, it means that in real terms we're earning less. Good evening to you, Deb. It's nice of you to join us. We're just thinking about some of the differences that us being locked up for a while has made. Car journeys have just dwindled away to about zit, really, and perhaps as a result there have been huge improvements in air quality.
That's right.
The level of nitrogen dioxide, NO2, is down 40% on the same time last year, and so if we could go out to the outside and take a deep breath, we'd probably sit at the window and do it. Then we would find that it's much kind of better out there, and some cities have actually seen falls of more than 60%. Including Brighton and Portsmouth, where the levels of NO2 is indeed, I see here, according to the BBC, released from car exhausts, and it's not very nice stuff. Huge amounts of demand for benefit from people who have presumably lost their jobs and presumably who didn't have much in the kitty to protect them in the event of a downturn. And we've had nearly 750,000 people apply for universal credit since the days of this lockdown. So the government is having to pay out a lot of money And there are only so many ways they can do that. They can do that by sort of lowering interest rates a bit to try and stimulate business a bit. They can print more of the stuff with this thing that's called quantitative easing, which is another sort of option. Or the government itself can start to spend a bit and do things. We can't quite spend the way we did after the credit crunch. Hello, Emmanuel. It's very nice to have you with us again. Terrific. And hello, Jesse. We're talking about some of the consequences of being locked at home in our little sort of fireside chat, except we don't have a fireside. But, the third option that's available to governments to kind of keep everything moving is to spend a bit. And so after 2007, whenever it was, credit crunch, we had big projects going on. We had Crossrail, we had HS2 and this kind of thing. This employs a lot of folks. It gives them money from government, which they'll then go out and spend in shops and places. And that's a boost to the economy. A lot of it comes back to the government as tax anyway. So, but, it's hard when we're all sitting at home to boost the economy in quite that way. We've seen a bit of help for small businesses, but only about 10% of the small businesses seem to be actually eligible or can get through to the helplines and this kind of thing. So we've still got a long way to go in a lot of these areas. And a very big hello to Kevin again in Ipswich. It's been a huge amount of time since we met, and I really hope you're getting on well. And we must go for a coffee when all this lifts, and which would be ever so nice.
Or a visual coffee as well. You don't have to wait for a long time.
We could have a virtual coffee, and we've got one here, and I've got my virtual cow, which hasn't got any milk in it actually. It's just
I've got the water in my hands.
Oh yeah, you've got the one in your hands, and I've got the same tea that I was having this morning, which I just keep topping up with hot water, which is horrible, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. So it is such a really an opportunity for everybody to reflect upon what we've been doing. Even the planet is having a breathe, and it's a reset time for everybody. In terms of what you're going to do if you happen to be working from home, are you going to go back to the office and say I don't know, prove yourself as a good person of trust for the company you're working for? If you happen to be full low, are you using this time productively in terms of having an overview of all your life completely in a holistic approach in terms of yourself, your finances, and your priorities, really, in that order. Obviously, health comes with yourself, and your family comes with yourself. It's not a separate entities. Yourself is whoever is with you in this journey. A young family, old family, your husband, yourself.
So again, in the global fight to beat this nasty thing that's going around at the moment, Australia is the latest country to announce that they're about to do some vaccine trials. So they've got loads and loads of vaccines out there. Obviously, it will be a thing to sort of gear up and manufacture them, and let's hope people do that as quickly as possible. But we've heard it's more a question now of which countries haven't started doing this than which countries have. I don't think Antarctica's got its own yet, but give it time, and there are some countries have more than one, so there is a point to us all staying at home here, because if when we come out we're a lot closer to a cure, or indeed to being able to treat it, and being able to treat it could happen very, very quickly indeed, because there are more than 300 clinical trials now of medicines about this thing, then it certainly gives people greater hope in going about their day-to-day lives, rather than without the fear of, like Boris Johnson finding himself in hospital on the verge of being on a ventilator.
It looked quite emotional yesterday when he was giving his announcement, his speech.
Yeah.
It was really emotional. So I hope everything hits home and really gives the NHS the money that it deserves, and the people.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so.
NHS.
A point here, this is in the Guardian, about this race to deal with it all, is that something that will come much quicker than the vaccines, because the vaccines are kind of unknown substances, and you put them in the bowl and then you put them in the blender or whatever, and then somebody has to try this thing, and it's kind of quite unknown, and it's got, I don't know, asparagus, pomegranate and mackerel in it. and and this is an unknown combo, so it has to go through some rigorous trials, and we have to make sure that it's not worse than the original illness. But with the combinations of drugs and things that are being tried, of course, all these drugs are actually licensed for use for something, whether it's an anti-malarial drug or a drug that's being used for HIV or something like this. So they have a clinical application, and they are permitted to be used on people. They've been tested to know that they're safe in that sense. So all we're testing those for is to see if they lick this thing and bring the cases down. So medicines should come out quite quickly. It's just a question of making sure whether they work. And since this medicine is this pandemic has about a 14-day cycle between getting symptoms and either recovering or not, it should be quite quick to know whether we've got the results we need or not, and that is that is a sign of sort of great hope, really. And I think that's a fantastic thing. That's a fantastic.
My hope is that hopefully there's going to be some kind of watch over the people that are creating these vaccines and these cures, because human nature tends to be greedy by nature, and more so if you happen to be in a position of power. So here is when we really all as race needs to keep an eye and very tight lead in terms of these people developing the vaccine, which we are very grateful, because we are all suffering, economy is suffering. The only one that isn't suffering, and it's a good thing, is the climate, which is good, and ourselves in resetting ourselves in what is important for our lives. However, when it comes to developing this kind of medications, vaccine, etc., sometimes the race, it's so tight and so close, but then that quality of the human nature of getting more money out of it triggers in. So I hope this is not going to be the case, and I hope that people developing this vaccine are really acting good faith for our race.
Absolutely. So now, I don't quite know how they know this. They must have access to cameras or something on the beach or whatever. But Google have been tracking recently here in the UK the numbers of people out and about. Particularly, and I know they're tracking Cambridge is one of the places, and there's a couple of seaside towns as well they're tracking and whatever. And they say that on trips to parks and beaches, were 29% lower than normal on come Easter Sunday, which is good. And it was very nice weather. Having said that, the week before, they were 52% lower, so a few more people were kind of venturing out. And I have to confess that we didn't just go to our local Sainsbury's and other supermarkets available. We went about 200 metres further on before looping back and coming. That was like a whole week's worth of exercise. So I think it's probably justifiable in that sense. But man, were we keeping a huge distance from sort of anybody who happened to be passing by, which is what we do. Hello, Telvin. Thank you for joining us in our living room live on this Monday evening, Easter Monday. And we're
Supposed to be a bank holiday.
we're sort of looking at the good news, and so Andrea Bocelli apparently gave a very moving, and thank you to Kevin for this bit of information. Kevin gives me so much help with my radio show, which is on Tuesdays, and it's so nice to see that he's entering into the spirit of this thing as well. So Andrea Bocelli gave an Easter concert in a cathedral in Milan, and the cathedral was empty. It was just him and a microphone,
very slim.
and he does indeed.
Super
But
slim.
isn't it wonderful the way that that people are rising to the challenge of basically stopping us going completely potty here at home, and recognizing that we're all kind of in this together. And
the emotions that go all over the place, but music is very soothing. So it's amazing what artists are doing on behalf of us.
So he was dressed up to the nines in his three-piece suit and black bow tie, and his Easter message was beamed all around the world, which I think is a lovely, from the Duomo Cathedral in Milan, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. Just one microphone and him and an empty cathedral. Oh, there's an organist playing in the background, but
3 meters
far more than 2 meters away, which is such a lovely gesture, and it brings us all together in ways that we would never have thought possible. Even Christmas. How long ago was Christmas? My goodness, I can hardly remember. Getting together with the family and,
Can we go back again, please?
playing Monopoly and all that sort of stuff. I know it just seems, it seems like almost another world, another world. It really, really does. But
So,
but
how long until this goes? Do you know? When are we going to be free again?
well,
Room?
oh, and hello, Robin. Thank you for joining us. The government are keeping it under review, and they can't let us out too early, because if they let us out too early, it peaks. That some of the mathematical models actually suggest it may peak up to 3 times, and so to avoid totally overwhelming the NHS, we'll probably have to keep the social distancing thing, and there'll be, I guess, probably for the rest of the year, sort of, it'll be like driving the car with the accelerator pedal, easing off a bit, people go out a bit, the number of cases start to rise, the pressure's on to the NHS, so they clamp down again. I think it's probably, this is going to be a 2020 phenomenon. So my 2020 diary has gone in the bin, I'll be honest with you. Yours is quite good for making notes in and doodling, so you'll be using it for that. But got up, went to the bathroom, went to the kitchen, went to the living room, back to the bathroom, back to the kitchen, back to bed. It's not really something you could fill the diary with every day in a very sort of meaningful sort of way.
No, we've been quite creative.
We have. We actually went via the corridor.
No, it's not what I meant. In terms of, we had plans, they had to change, and then we rechanged them again, and here we are again, reshuffling.
I know. Cause
yeah, but the good thing is that it's giving everybody, this lockdown is giving everybody the opportunity to reassess their lives, and there is a lot of emotion going on out there in terms of people feeling anxious, people feeling a bit left out, lonely, but luckily we all have now access to the internet and all this information, and so many people out there sharing their talents, big names like Andrea Bocelli, we just spoke, many other names out there just really giving it all. So whatever you fancy, all you have to do is Google the name or whatever thought you're having through. If you feel anxious, just look for help. It's out there. It's out there. So don't feel lonely. Take this opportunity to really reassess what's triggering these kind of anxiety or issues, and address it. And but look for professional help. Here they are. We have so many people in our network who are professionals, giving their share and expertise.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. Sticking with the Guardian, they've got an article comparing this herd immunity with the lockdown situation, and it seems to be things are kind of very different from one country to another. Really, some of the more authoritarian regimes in Hungary, they've got an indefinite clampdown now for as long as the president wants, which is bit much really, but we've got countries in total lockdown, like here in the UK and Spain and France. We've got some countries who are doing just a bit of social distancing, like Sweden and Korea, and then we've got countries doing very little, like Turkey and Brazil. So we'll have to see how all this pans out. But with the social distancing and isolation versus herd immunity, there is at the moment no guarantee that somebody who's had this can't get it again. So this idea of the herd immunity is a bit of a flawed one. With vaccines may protect us in ways that getting this can't, because the vaccines would try to look for common stuff in the ever. These viruses to a degree mutate all the time. The vaccines would be engineered to take account of changes that are likely to occur, and to try and target things in these viruses that are across all the various strands of them. But like if you've had it, you might just be immune to that, and a slightly different strain could infect you. We don't know. We still don't know. It's it's early days, and we're facing a sort of an unknown enemy, I guess. So Kevin says I'm all on my own. Luckily, I have remote family and friends and the internet. You've got us. We Kevin and we go back to almost prehistoric times, and I was
I knew you were not that young.
We were looking this morning. I can't remember why. We started looking up my old friend Tommy Vance, who was one of the original Radio 1 guys and a pirate radio DJ. And we came across some stuff about the radio station, what was Rock Radio Network. I haven't got any recordings at all of this Rock Radio Network, which is absolutely awful, because I had them all on VHS tape. And when I was clearing out all my VHS tapes, I don't know, Star Trek or whatever, I forgot that these recordings were there as well. So they all went to landfill, which is rather a shame.
Oh
But we found a few things with Tommy Vance. We found Tommy Vance and the members of Iron Maiden in this house, which was at in a road called Briarfield Avenue in Finchley. I can tell you now because it's been 20 years since we used it, and like Iron Maiden and us were going into the local pub at the end of the road for a beer, and these guys, their jaws hit the floor, man. It was kind of most extraordinary at times, but those are the days when I first met my dear friend Kevin, otherwise known as Rocker Kev, but only on Tuesday nights, I think.
Did you know that friends are as genetically similar to each other as fourth cousins are? Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
There you go.
So that means we pick our friends because we kind of we look subconsciously.
Have commonalities.
Wow. That is the most extraordinary thing. That is the most extraordinary thing. So,
Yes.
Kevin and I will have a DNA test then, and one of these days.
Whoa. No.
Just kidding, just kidding. Another thing that Kevin sent to us says that the vaccine could be ready as early as September.
Oh, yes,
Because
please.
I'm dying to get out of this house. I'm not going to be first in the queue, but I'll let Yema go first. But then if she's still standing after half an hour, we take her. Do you know how they used to have food tasters? The old Roman emperors.
Yes, yes.
You can be my vaccine tester.
Yeah, well, yeah, I already am.
Only kidding. Only kidding.
Yeah, no, I'm really, I can't wait to go out and have one of these kind of tea experience in which you get to have all these delicious sandwiches, scones with cream and I don't know, jam. Oh, delicious, delicious.
My goodness me, because you may remember that, as according to this survey that was done the other day, that the British people, when they went to go out, the first thing on their list was to go to a restaurant, and then the second thing was something I can't talk about because this is a nice, clean family show. But anyway, yes, it is.
I'm not following. But anyway, yes, because we do have a coffee maker and it makes delicious and scrumptious coffee and everything else. But
Yes.
the atmosphere that you were getting lately on the cafes and restaurants, seeing people working, interacting, having meetings with their computers, their laptops, and it's just that buzz that really keeps you going. And I do miss that.
So so the great news from my good friend Kevin is from Oxford Uni, that other place that we don't talk about very much down here, and they say that a vaccine for COVID-19 could be ready as soon as September, and they say this with 80% certainty, which is pretty damn amazing. I think that
Sarah
is
Gilbert.
quite an extraordinary thing. A lady called Sarah Gilbert, and they made a note that journalists shouldn't pester this team because they're trying to do some work. And so journalists are respectfully requested to burger off, and let's hope that they do. And the first human trials are going to take place in a fortnight, and the team have been working 7 days a week to kind of rush this through, which is very gratifying, very gratifying. And so they say something by the autumn if everything goes perfectly.
You'll be the first in the queue, right?
And I'll be second in the queue.
No. I think the fifth, probably.
Maybe, but I'll be up there. I tell you, absolutely, no question at all about this whatsoever. It looks you've got something scientific looking here.
Yeah, what happens is imagination. I tend to daydream quite a lot. My daughter also. We are daydreamers, and I always thought that I wasn't intelligent enough, and that I obviously, I've always put myself down because I thought, I can't believe I just go daydreaming away with the fairies, like people would say. But really, I'm just finding out that people dreamers, were basically the basics of civilization, because we were the thinkers, we were the somewhere, thought of a wheel, yeah, and it just started making, because so now is the time to imagine, and there are 7 steps to imagination, apparently.
Wow,
So-
interesting.
So I want to be really cracking on this when I'll talk about it tomorrow then. It's interesting. Daydreamers, we need them.
I'm thinking of songs. I've got my DJ hat on now, so Kevin will have to tell me if I've missed any. Songs about dreaming. There was a song called Daydreamer by David Cassidy, but I wouldn't talk about that on Tuesday nights. I'm just a daydreamer. But anyway, and then there's Dream On by Aerosmith. And then there's Dream by the Everly Brothers, and I'm sure that, and Number 9 Dream by John Lennon. So two of those would definitely get a spin on the old rock show. But anyway, I digress. So that's me daydreaming, and it doesn't get much more dreamy
You always
than
do.
that.
You always do.
This is true, but that's supposed to be our secret, you know. Whoa. Lockdowns is the thing. 1/3 of the planet now is on this lockdown, so that's potentially a lot of viewers for our thing, really, because I can't imagine if you could go to the park that you'd be watching this. So it's definitely a kind of a stuck at home job. We will continue to do this as long as lockdown is.
No, we're very grateful
continuing.
because for us it's kind of a therapeutic. I am a very shy person by nature. Well, I have a bit of both.
But
yes, extra and introvert.
We've never
Both.
spoken so much since we've sort of it's like an hour of time when we're having a chat every day. It's really nice. It's really nice, and also thank you for joining us on this kind of bonding exercise. So India, China, France, Italy, New Zealand, Poland, and here in the UK, we've got the most restrictive quarantines out there, according to Business Insider. And which is quite an interesting thing to be lumped with these other guys, but you know, increasingly countries are doing that, and it does seem to be working, because if you've got a virus that you catch by sneezing somebody on somebody's thing, or touching the doorknob that they've touched, then if you're at home and these guys can't come into your home, or maybe you've got it and you can't go out of your home, that would seem to sort of cut off the thing at the source, really, in many ways. Oh, Daydream Believer, of course it was. Thank you so much, Rodney. That's absolutely wonderful. I do think that's a wonderful song. And Kevin tells me that Yngwie Malmsteen, Dreaming, Tell Me, is another great song. And Yngwie Malmsteen, while we're on the subject of music, okay, come on, bring it on. Yngwie did a fabulous cover with Ronnie James Dio of the Aerosmith song Dream On, and that is one of my top 5 songs of all time. There's this fella who's also called David, and we don't half look similar, do we, who went to school with me?
Oh yes.
Because we went to see him.
Blondes,
we went to see him. We've only seen him the one time, and we haven't met. Oh, Irma hasn't met Kevin yet, which we'll have to remedy as soon as we're allowed to go out and about. Because we were planning to head down there this summer. We'll see how it goes. We'll probably be summer next year now or whatever. But anyway, my friend David, who's like a spitting image of me, really, only he knows more about music than I do. And he sent me his top 3 the other day, and we're going to be spinning those on the rock show. So we'll have to get Kevin to do his top 3 or his top 5 as well, and I'll have to do one. And won't that be fun?
Yes.
So all these empty streets going around Europe is quite an extraordinary kind of thing. It's like if we could be the fly on the wall going around these streets and thing, it would be an amazing thing to see these tourist centres with nobody there.
Yes.
But the first one we'd go to, well, we wouldn't get a flight, but then we'd get there and get arrested. So all we'd see is the inside of a Spanish police cell or something. So that probably wouldn't be quite the thing, really. Indeed. In some places in Spain, apparently they were handing out masks to commuters, which I think is kind of very nice, really. Which is good. And a few sectors of the Spanish economy are going again, which I think is quite gratifying. Now, Viktor Orban, he's the Prime Minister in Hungary. I knew I'd read this somewhere. And he has gained the power to rule by decree indefinitely. So, you know, we just have to make sure that politicians don't exactly. Well, you know, would-be authoritarians are taking the excuse to have a sort of power grab. He's also suspended elections, and this was passed by 137 to 53 in their national parliament. So, anybody who complains about what Boris and those guys are doing, then there's worse out there. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to take sides as to who should or shouldn't be prime minister anymore.
Okay,
but Hungary is a fully blown part of the European Union, and it's supposed to be made up of countries that have a sort of reasonable respect for the ballot box. And clearly, this COVID thing is not an indefinite thing. and in 2 years' time, 100% it's going to be over. In 6 months' time, I don't know, maybe 30% it's going to be over. In 18 months' time, maybe, you know, somewhere in between the two. But it's not going to go on forever. And suspending elections is I think a bit much, really.
That's when you begin to form dictatorships and all this.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Kevin sent us the greatest minds of all time.
thank you.
And obviously at number one it's me, closely followed by number two Leonardo da Vinci, number three Isaac Newton. So that's the top three.
Isaac Newton, yeah.
And only kidding.
Apparently there is
But yeah,
a tree here in Cambridge, and
there is
the same tree is growing everywhere.
Well, unfortunately, see here, yeah, this is true, and okay,
Galileo.
I'll have to confess this. And hello, Sarah, thanks for your company tonight. So and hello, David, as well. In Cambridge, okay, here we've got this tree just outside Trinity College, where Isaac Newton was the resident guy, and it is said to be a cutting from the tree where the apple fell on his head. Ouch! And then he discovered gravity, although gravity, I think, had been around for a while, but nobody had really discovered it.
Yeah, the thing is that you were showing me around, and you told me this. I'm a bit of a gullible person in certain things, so I thought, I believe this. But then we found out that there are many trees that belong from the same tree.
Well,
so,
but I'm a gullible person as well, because I mean, and you're the researcher, and you kind of shattered all my dreams and illusions by pointing out that there's like about 20 of these trees, actually all around the world, which claim to be cuttings from Isaac Newton's tree. So, including in the orchard of the place where he grew up, which is probably where it happened, you know. Queensryche's Silent Lucidity about dream control. There we go. Well, these songs are coming in thick and fast, and yeah. Yeah,
too
thank
much
you,
very
sir.
interesting. Yeah, thank you, Karen.
That's absolutely
Really
terrific. Absolutely terrific. So yeah, so Hungary's not too good. Singapore has closed all their schools and non-essential businesses, which is a pretty good thing. A pretty good thing, because you know, if you go into it's like driving a car. If you go into lockdown, you're taking your foot off the accelerator, it slows down. If everybody mingles, you're putting your foot hard on the gas pedal, pedal to the metal, I think they call it, and up it goes. And so at least there is some kind of mechanism to keep this under control for the time being. But we need that medicine, and we need that immunity and everything, and we haven't got it. It's a completely new thing floating around there, looking a bit like a golf ball with with needles stuck in it, like a pincushion, isn't it? Really, looks a bit like that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, sort of.
Yeah.
A cross between a tennis ball and a pincushion. There. Right, I can go home now. I've made the great scientific breakthrough of the century. Whoa! In Singapore, it's forbidden to even have exercise or dog walks. So anybody who complains about stuff here, come on, we got it easy. Because especially if you can exercise while dog walking at the same time, and a police permit is required for every trip outside, which is that's in Dubai. That's in Dubai. I beg your pardon, and the United Arab Emirates. That is perhaps a trifle on the heavy side. In Peru, this is getting comic now, because in Peru, men can leave their houses on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but in Panama, those are the days when women can leave. So I expect along the border, there's quite a lot going on there.
Yeah, well, I think in Monterrey, what they're doing now.
Which is where?
In Mexico. Sorry. Yeah. There's a Monterrey in the USA also. In Monterrey, in Mexico, what they do is they're closing the borders to other states to just stop people going to or from Monterrey.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, it's
Which
ironic that Donald Trump wanted his wall, and now it's being used to keep them in.
Yeah, but we are building it.
Which nobody
We're
could quite have.
Wall now. Let's just keep them out.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. And we've got a 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew in Thailand going on with very little in the way of exceptions there. So you know, the only exceptions is people seeking medical care or transporting essential goods. So you know, it's all right. It's all right. We haven't heard much about Russia, but here's the thing: that we haven't heard much about Russia at all in the context of this pandemic. But Moscow's residents at the end of March were ordered to stay in their houses and will need passes for their movements.
Oh, wow.
Obviously the authoritarian countries find it much easier to do this lockdown things because they snap their fingers, don't even need a vote. Rodney says Wales councils have banned tourist serviced accommodation until September, according to somebody in Newport, and those kind of places will only be open for key workers.
Yeah. I think all of our states at the moment are to do with key workers also by common sense. But yeah, Wales is made it official. Wow, interesting.
Absolutely. New Zealand has done pretty well. They went into lockdown quite early, and they have not had many deaths at all. I think just 5 or 6, something like that.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. But
Good.
by really clamping down hard, and I think it's so the case, the severity of this has varied very considerably from one country to another. I think, in a sense, the more democratic we are, the more we can say, "Hey, who fancies a barbecue?" The more danger we're in.
Yes, yes.
But we only need that sort of stuff when there's really something bad going on. Not generally.
Yeah, but in terms of vaccines or cures or treatments or anything, I think we need to go and clap the scientists just to get it done. Please,
Oh, yeah.
hurry up.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Yeah. No, these guys are doing a great job. They're doing a great job.
But I don't think anything is going to go back to normal. The normal is gone. That life has been wiped out completely. So there's a new normal at the other side. So what that normal is going to be, that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. Here we are on the old Telegraph, and they're talking about the 4 potential exit strategies, because I only knew 3. So this is quite interesting. And let's go to number 1. Intermittent social distancing. Yeah, that would be... we'd lift the restrictions a bit, and then the cases we'd have to monitor it though very closely. The cases would go up a bit. We'd impose it. We'd lift it. We'd impose it, and that would stop us all going like completely insane here at home. But I would still be walking down the middle of the road, I tell you. And
well, they always go on a straight line, cars or not cars.
That's very true.
Oh God.
That's very true. And so,
Why is that?
That could be a thing. It's because it's because I never got the chance to actually drive a car, so I do the next best thing and walk down the centre of the road, but only now, which we can here now. It's like 1 car a day. It's like we're in the middle of the Sahara here. And there are apps coming online. There's a very nice collaboration between Apple and Google, which is going to only use Bluetooth, so not store it somewhere centrally, but you'll be able to know if you've come into close contact with somebody who's had this. And this is nice. This is the private sector stepping up to the plate, and and saving lives through lockdowns. There's the little graph here in terms of how we've done in respect of that, which is fantastic. So number 1 was easing off the lockdowns, but kind of sometimes we do social distancing and sometimes we don't. Being sort of the biggest hypochondriac that was ever born, I'd probably social distance the whole time, really. And I just there was some guy that had a thing like a hula hoop in a park. I don't even remember that. It was attached round his shoulders with string or something. And he had this great big circle around him to indicate what 2 meters was. So there's a thing.
Yeah, quirkiness galore. That's
Absolutely.
good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we need to get on with life. It's washing past, according to and we have one life. So we need to give it a bit of thought if we're going to get the best out of it.
Yeah.
According to the rules of life.
Absolutely. Hey.
Every day, every second, life is a washing past an alarming rate, and it goes on getting faster and faster. So, This is our project. Make it count.
Well, they do sometimes say, don't they? Stop the world, I want to get off. Hello, Charlie. Hey, my friend from Total Rock and Rock Radio Network. Rock on, bro. Hope you're doing very well these days, and very nice to see you again, sir. And well, today we're sort of taking stock. It's 3 weeks more or less to the second now, give or take 20 minutes either way, that the Prime Minister came on the telly and announced this lockdown. So we're 3 weeks into it. Obviously, I'm a lot more loopy than I was when it started, but and another 3 weeks probably of this, and whew, but so, here we are. And you know,
Broadcast gives the same.
and there are 4 ways that this is going to end apparently, and one of them won't be with me diving head first down the stairs, I think. But the first one, well, no, that's a joke in poor taste, right?
Definitely.
Which is my expertise. It's something I do very well. So it'll be feet first, and so. So anyway, one was to have some intermittent social distancing here, where we ease on and ease the restrictions and bring them in, ease the restrictions and bring them in, to kind of reduce the pressure on the NHS and look at the hospital waiting times and so forth. And then the next one is to allow the healthy people out. And again, that's a bit dodgy because, as we were talking about earlier, we don't know whether people who've had this disease will get it again. So it might not be the case. It might not be the case that just because you've had it once and been asymptomatic, that you would have the same experience next time around.
Yeah.
And
We don't know how it behaves yet, so there's so much
Yep.
uncertainty in terms of
Absolutely.
what's next.
Then there's some seek and destroy, which sounds like something out of a science fiction. The strategy number 3 is seek and destroy.
Right. What, with weapons?
There was it could be Rambo. I was in particular thinking of Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, which was a puppet show when I was very young, where you had to kind of the Mysterons were sworn enemies of Earth who came from Mars, interestingly enough. So I don't know why the rover on Mars hasn't been blown up by them, but anyway, and so seek and destroy means. You know, you let people roam about a bit, but you keep a very close. You do a lot of testing. You find out who's got it, and immediately you jump on them and get them to isolate and everything, and trace all the contacts and quarantine maybe just the street they live in or something like that. You know, I think that's way beyond the capability of this government, but I mean I could be wrong.
Because Wuhan is back to normal now, is that right?
Wuhan is back to normal. It's not to say that they won't have a second. The fear in Wuhan is that they'll have a second spike because of all the people walking around there who are not showing symptoms but who do have the virus floating around their bloodstream. That's possible. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Wuhan is much better than normal. Unfortunately, they've reopened the wet markets, which I would like to go over there and slap somebody about because that's where it all started, apparently, or according to some.
There should be something about it, to be honest.
And so that is not a good thing. And if we could have an international ban on that, I think it would be kind of very helpful. But that's just me. And then option 4, they say, is to wait for a vaccine or treatment, and that's maybe the most realistic of all the options here. That we can't stay locked in our homes until it comes, but we can continue to be careful and, you know, wash our hands for 20 seconds, or it feels like 20 minutes, doesn't it? It feels like 20 minutes. It really does, and all that kind of thing. And this may be the only kind of long-term solution to actually being normal again, because all the other solutions assume that the virus is there. And some of us are going out and some of us are being exposed to it. So I think, you know, it may happen quite soon, though, because the medicines, as I mentioned earlier, that are going to save us from this are tried and tested ones that are licensed for maybe malaria or HIV or that kind of stuff. But the fact that, you know, they're basically safe, if they work against this, we can start taking them.
Let's hope so. Let's hope that they get it.
Absolutely, which would be a great, that would be a great thing. Now,
awesome.
Somebody, is this who has suggested this? It's the Children's Commissioner has made a suggestion that I think is absurd, which is that schools should open in the summer. We're in lockdown to prevent the spread of the virus. All things being equal, it won't spread now until the autumn. Why would you accelerate that process? I disagree. When I disagree with something, I tell you, I don't mince my words. I think that's dumb. Okay, and so you know, because we're not on BBC One or something, I don't have to mince my words. I can tell it as I see it. So the lockdown we're talking about Wuhan. It's not totally over, but the restrictions are being eased. So there are 3 medical staff hugging here, but with masks on. So you know, it's a press photo. They're also carrying patriotic flags. So something tells me it's not a spontaneous gesture. So yes, Kevin says, and I am with you 100% there. The main thing is to stay at home and social distance to allow the NHS to get on to do their job and to be able to cope.
I know, because they themselves are falling ill, and
we've lost people.
Yes, we have lost people, and key workers, people that are looking after just checking the temperature, that needs to be done.
Yeah.
They are the soldiers out there.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's
So
just so horrible.
COVIDiots can have their barbecues and their Sunday lunch get-togethers and all this kind of thing. There are doctors and nurses dying. It's that serious.
Yeah, the thing is, they went first with the idea, the younger generation went with the idea that, oh, let's get this herd immunity stuff going on. But what they done is they become susceptible to the virus, and now if they say, well, this is just my logical thinking, develop some kind of comorbidity, they might get worse, and a lot of young people are going now. So let's just stay in, guys. Let's do our best.
Absolutely, no question about
Reset
it.
your life. Keep in touch with your beloved ones using technology. God, I remember when I first moved to England, a long time ago, calling to Mexico was so expensive, so we had no internet or things like that. So it was very difficult. Now it's just a pleasure to really, all we have to do is stay at home,
Oh yeah,
Netflix binge or any other things that you want to do, and just take a stock.
It's
of your
honestly,
life.
it's
A reset.
honestly.
Just be ready for, because we don't know how life is gonna be at the other end of this. We don't really know.
Absolutely. I think everybody would agree that in some way, shape or form, it's going to be different. Here's a little thing that came up on. Oh no, I wanted to get before we get to that screen. I wanted to see the news story that flashes up just before it. So I've been waiting very patiently. We'll get back to that. I know. So Kevin says, "Do I believe the numbers coming out of China? No, I don't. I think that there were 500 urns a day in Wuhan being collected by people. It doesn't add up. I think the numbers coming out of China were about 10 times what we were told they were. And that is a huge disparity. And I'm not the only one. There are other commentators who believe that too.
Yes, I think figures from any government, unfortunately, are going to be completely different to what is actually happening on the ground. It's happening in Mexico. Everybody is complaining about the figures not being the realistic ones, and say if you got something, they have their own ways of treating the patients and just coding them, so that the figures are completely misleading everywhere. So the best thing is just to take everything with a pinch of salt, and just keep yourself safe.
We don't want, obviously whole scale panic, but I think from my spreadsheets, which I'm just an amateur guy who does this in his spare time, but my guess is that the ballpark estimate of the number of people infected is between 500,000 and 1.5.
Yeah.
People walking around with this virus, and most of them don't show any symptoms. Which these cases that we read about in the newspaper are just a very, very tiny minority. It might be as little as 0.6 of the percent of the people who were infected. Now, quickly, the nurse who treated Boris should be given a medal, says another patient who has cared for her, which I think is very nice, isn't it, really? And I think all of them should be, to be honest. I think every single member of the health service should be rewarded for what they've done. There are certain circumstances where if a member of your family is receiving care for this virus, you will be able to see them. Obviously, there have been a lot of very distressing stories about people who weren't. If the patient is receiving end-of-life care, there is a chance that you'll be allowed to see them. If the visitor is the birthing partner of a woman in labour, then there's a chance you'll be allowed in. If the visitor is a parent or appropriate adult visiting a child patient, then allowances will be made for that. Or if the visitor is supporting someone with a mental health issue such as dementia, a learning disability or autism, where not being present would cause the patient severe distress. So these are the 4 cases where you might be able to visit somebody who's got this virus. It's sensible that we don't all traipse in and out of the hospital or indeed the care homes, because we're bringing Germans with us. And we saw the other day, didn't we? There was a lady outside the window of a care home, and her elderly mother was inside, and the mother again was suffering from dementia and couldn't understand why the daughter wasn't coming in.
I know. It was so lovely to see her saying, "No, come in, I want to see you." So I think she was told that there was some kind of fire outside, and so she had to be stay indoors. But yes, we have to apply common sense to every single. I mean, we all want to be with our dearest ones, but it's a matter of having your self-assessment. For example, my opinion in this case, if you are going to give birth, I would not like to have my partner husband with me, because I might have other children at home that need looking after. What if I develop some kind of comorbidity? What if by giving birth I develop something else? So who's going to look after the baby? So you have to really make an assessment prior to accept this kind of companionship during your birth or giving birth.
Absolutely, absolutely.
My personal opinion, that is.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm just comparing, actually, just before we get to the end of this, what the Sun newspaper and the Financial Times say about when the lockdown will end. Because I think that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. It doesn't get much more crazy than that. So the Sun says blah, 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 up to 6 months. Oh my God, up to 6 months. And wow, and so that's a pretty. But then that's a big headline to have on the front page, isn't it? Really. And the sub headline is people in Peterborough flout social distancing rules during lockdown. Even in Peterborough, anyway, I don't think there are any beaches there. Then at the other end of the spectrum, the Financial Times, after many pages of reading, say that the things would be bad for up to 2 weeks, and they talk about removing restrictions on 20 to 30-year-olds who don't live with their parents, which could release 4.2 million people. And an official jokes that a youth first policy might mean you could even have a maximum age for drinking in pubs, which would be quite a thing of 12 or something.
Maximum age.
So that well, if all the young people not living with their parents are going to do this, and then there's a lot of a huge long article about whether we can or whether we can't actually let everybody out. So I can't even get to the end of the Financial Times article because it's far too long, and I'm sure the lockdown will end before I finish reading it. So with that I'll put that down there. But sort of they explore so many possibilities that they leave me with a bit of a headache.
Right. So just before we go, just a little share of this kind of everyday mindfulness book that I have, by Timber guy, and it's you can't calm the storm, so stop trying. What you can do is calm yourself. The storm will pass. This is just another chapter in our lives as a race and on our individuality kind of thing. So let's just keep going.
Absolutely. I'm reminded a bit about this English King Canute, who sat on his throne at the seaside. You know this story, and he commanded the sea to go out. But if you timed it right, it could be quite impressive for us plebs. But if you timed it wrong, you'd make an ass of yourself. So I'm not sure of the rest of the story, but I don't know the actual outcome in that case. But it was in all the history books when I was young. But I just remember that bit of it, really.
What does Kim say? Do you what? Do you believe in? Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've done that. Well, right. Thank you so much for your company tonight. It's been a real honour to welcome you into our living room as we do most nights here. Stay safe, look after yourselves, stay at home. It's a drag, especially when the weather's nice. But we'll be here tomorrow to try to cheer things up a bit. And in the meantime, do feel free to message meantime with comments and stuff like this, because it's lovely to hear from you, because you are our last link to the outside world, really, and we're sort of Robinson Crusoe marooned on that island. And Friday comes but once a week, so there you go. Take care of yourselves. See you next time. Thank you very much once again. We're honoured that you would spend the time with us.